Hello dear friends, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel and this is the daily review of the Ukrainian front. So friends, over the past 24 hours, Russian fighters carried out a very important operation to force a river crossing at one location. I'll tell you about it in detail a bit later, as well as about the new prospects that have opened up. And those prospects look very, very good. But let's go step by step. Today we'll begin from the north and then gradually move south. The Kursk region, yes, you heard that right, Kursk. The thing is, just recently the AFU stepped on the same rake they already hit back in early summer. They tried once again, and you won't believe where, at Tyotkino. Honestly, sometimes I'm amazed. Just think how many soldiers they sacrificed here for the sake of one single village. They battered against it in May, in June, in the first half of July, all with zero results. Then there was a relative calm for 2 months, and now a new attempt. This time, a group of 12 soldiers from the 24th Separate Assault Brigade, Aidar, tried to sneak into the sewage treatment facilities. That's located east of Tyotkino and west of Basavka, which is under Russian control. And what do you think happened? Russian paratroopers from the 217th Regiment caught them on the approach. They didn't even manage to cross the border between Sumy and Kursk regions. 5 of them were killed, the rest retreated. The result, the AFU failed to reach the treatment facilities. At the same time, Russian reconnaissance observed AFU activity near Novi, Put, or more precisely on its approaches. But they never went into an attack, probably looked at the fate of their comrades in Tyotkino, and decided common sense should prevail. Friends, just a quick pause. As always, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. If you've been watching my videos more than once and still haven't subscribed, please do so. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thanks to those who already subscribed, and let's continue. Moving on, Sumy region. Here the AFU keep pressing on Alexeyevka. Let's be honest, the Russian garrison there is not in the best position since it's pressed from 3 sides. However, our guys have been holding in that situation for over a month now, and so far all attacks have been repelled. The AFU still haven't been able to enter the village, though they keep trying and keep dying on the approaches. From the Russian advances, Yunakovka is practically finished. Even Ukrainian maps now color almost the whole village red, leaving only the outskirts in grey. But there's no AFU control there at all. As I've already told you, we shouldn't expect any major Russian advances here in the near future, because 70% of the forces have been withdrawn, leaving only enough to defend. Now, I promised to tell you about the complex and, most importantly, successful river crossing operation. But before that, a couple of words about Kharkiv region. At the moment, there are only 2 active sectors, the bridgehead near Malovo and Kupyansk. Regarding the bridgehead, I told you recently how Russian troops crossed the border at a new spot and are now trying to push deeper. That's the current situation here. Russian troops continue to advance. The main goal, I think, is to straighten the front line, at least along the Kamyanka line. As for Kupyansk, things are relatively quiet, although very fierce battles continue. Just the other day, Zelensky boasted, saying they would destroy the Russian army in Kupyansk. I'll put it this way. By the end of the year, we'll see who destroys whom, and under whose control Kupyansk will actually be. And it's important to understand that the offensive is also developing east of Kupyansk. Russian fighters have already reached the Petropavlovka ponds. The battle for Petropavlovka itself is approaching, and that will seriously complicate the situation for the AFU garrison in the left bank part of Kupyansk. Let's move on to the Seversk Lyman sector. And this is exactly where the event I mentioned at the beginning took place. After driving the AFU out of the southern part of the Kremenaya forests, Russian fighters managed to do what we discussed 2 episodes ago. They forced the Severodonetsk river, entered the riverside forest belt, pushed out the AFU, and advanced right up to the Seversk-Serebryanka road. Yes, the advance in numbers doesn't look huge, just a bit more than 1 square kilometer, but it is of enormous importance. Back in spring 2022, if you remember, the Severodonetsk was an almost impassable obstacle. Russian forces lost a lot of equipment and men during earlier attempts to cross. But this time, they managed to get to the other bank straight away. Now the key thing is to hold the ground and build on the success. From here, the logical direction is toward Dronovka, with the clear objective of completely blocking Seversk from the north. Ukrainian military experts are already panicking over this, writing that if the Russian operation develops further, Seversk will be in big trouble. Who would have thought of such prospects 6 months ago, when this whole sector seemed dead and half of the Kremenaya forest was under AFU control? But everything changes, and quickly. It's obvious the AFU position here is collapsing. I'm tempted to jump ahead, but I won't. Let the guys do their work. No need to rush them. Let's continue, still in the Lyman area. Heavy fighting is now unfolding on the approaches to Novosyolovka. Reports say Russian troops also crossed another river here, the Netrius, and bypassed the village from the north, moving into a small industrial zone. Fierce fighting is ongoing there. Too early to talk about control, we'll wait for developments. As I've mentioned before, if the Russian army succeeds in Novosyolovka and takes this settlement, then the advance could go not only toward Lyman, but also toward Sviatogorsk. We'll be watching. On the Konstantinovka front, there's little news. The only update I've heard is that Russian troops advanced a bit along the railway near the village of Alexandro-Shultino. That's basically it. Battles are also ongoing in the Garden Partnership area. Control there is split 50-50. Moving to the Dobropoli sector, again, no big updates. Fighting continues around the stronghold in Shakovo. The Russian army is attacking from the east, while the AFU counterattacks to the south. So again, we have a 50-50 situation. Success on one side, success on the other. It's quite a tough situation. But where the situation is much more favorable is in the zone of responsibility of the Vostok grouping. The guys are advancing well in both Dnepropetrovsk and Zaporozhye regions. In Dnepropetrovsk, after taking Berezovoye, they have already moved towards Stepovoye. According to Ukrainian sources, Russian troops captured a large stronghold on the approaches to the village. That essentially means the settlement is doomed, since it's tiny, just a couple of streets, and its defense relied on those strongholds. Once the stronghold falls, fighting moves directly into the village, and the AFU have nowhere serious left to hold on to. Also today we received information that Kalinovskoye was completely taken by Russian forces. The Vostok group provided video confirmation. That's another settlement added to their tally. At the same time, in Zaporozhye region, Russian forces are actively trying to break through toward Novo-Grigorovka. The guys report some success, though without concrete details yet. So we wait. Overall, it's worth noting that the foliage is thinning out. Soon it will be gone entirely. That means offensives will become harder, and likely the pace of advances will slow down. Moving on along the map, near the settlement of Andreyevka-Klevtsovoy, Russian positions were attacked. Let me remind you, Andreyevka-Klevtsovo is already under Russian control. Reports say Russian positions there and in Zeleny Gai were targeted by AFU FPV drones. In turn, Russian troops struck AFU positions near Gavrilovka and Ivanovka. AFU positions north of Filia were also attacked. But let me remind you, the area north of Filia is hit daily, since the AFU have some of their strongest fortified defense lines there. Earlier, we even saw FAB strikes here. Ukrainian troops unloading reserves at the defense line, and then FABs from Russian aviation arriving immediately afterwards. Finally, reports say Russian forces are expanding their zone of control north of Udachne, advancing toward Novopavlovka. And just to remind you, Novopavlovka is right here. And after the Ukrainian military lost Moravka, and they lost it literally just a few days ago, after months of heavy fighting for that settlement, Moravka is now fully under Russian control. Reports say Russian forces have already reached the borders of the Dnepropetrovsk region. At this point, Novopavlovka itself is in a critical position, or rather, not yet critical, but in the coming days assault operations in the direction of this settlement may begin. Moving further along the map, near the settlement of Udachne, heavy fighting is taking place north of the village. It is reported that Russian forces are expanding their zone of control north of Udachne. Pro-Ukrainian sources, however, claimed that an attack by Russians here was repelled and that the AFU launched a counterattack in which they achieved some success. But there is no confirmation from either side, only reports in the news. Also, according to reports, fierce fighting continues west of Udachne and north of Kodino. No territorial changes have been recorded here so far. Now to Pokrovsk. It is being reported that a turning point has taken place in favor of the Russian army. At this moment, the key situation is that Russian troops may take control of the entire southern part of Pokrovsk. If that happens, then holding the northern part of Pokrovsk will become meaningless, and the same will apply to Mirnograd. Because if Pokrovsk falls under Russian control, the AFU in Mirnograd will be cut off from supply and encircled. There have been updates, or rather, yesterday evening some video footage appeared from this sector. These were Russian forward positions. It is also reported that Russian forces advanced toward those positions through the settlement of Tunishino. According to some sources, Russian forces also moved along the tree lines, which were AFU defensive lines. These tree lines were cleared, and Russian troops entered Novopavlovka. All the territory marked red on the map has now come under Russian control. The advance here reached up to 3 kilometers in favor of the Russian armed forces. It is also reported that Tunishino is under Russian control. Demining and clearing are underway. Some Ukrainian sources, however, claim that Tunishino remains under AFU control. As soon as we receive confirmation, changes will be made on the map. There are also unconfirmed reports that Russian forces have effectively taken this whole sector under their control. Earlier, Russian positions were here at this point, but now all this territory has passed under Russian control. Currently, reports indicate that Russian forces took the western part of Pokrovsk, advanced further in the southern part of the city near the high-rise buildings in this area. Previously, there had already been information about Russian advances here, but no visual confirmation followed, just news reports. Nevertheless, a turning point is unfolding here, and it is in favor of the Russian army. In the next week, perhaps within 2 weeks, we could see serious changes here in Russia's favor, unless the Ukrainian side brings in more reserves to stabilize the front line. But bringing in reserves is becoming harder and harder, since all the supply roads, here is one and here is another, are completely under Russian fire control. This makes supplying the AFU extremely difficult. Numerous videos have already appeared showing AFU supply vehicles being destroyed, with Russian ATGM crews taking them out. As for Mirnograd, fierce fighting is taking place in the northern part of the city. Battles are also reported in Krasny Lyman and in the area of Rodinskoye. Some sources claim Russian forces are expanding their zone of control there, but this requires confirmation, as many times before similar claims about Russian advances in Krasny Lyman turned out to be inaccurate. There were also earlier reports that Russian troops entered the northern outskirts of Mirnograd and captured most of Rodinskoye, but those claims did not match reality. So as of now, no changes have been confirmed, and that concludes the military updates for today. Now let's take a look at the political arena. Western sanctions against Russia's shadow fleet are not working, writes the New York Times. According to the publication, ships in the so-called shadow fleet transport Russian oil, and when they fall under sanctions, they simply re-register under another flag, change their names, and hide where the oil is loaded. What is happening with the shadow fleet, the report says, may signal a shift in global trade, where sanctioned states like Iran and Russia can freely supply oil to India, China, and anywhere else. Reuters warns that the West is pushing Russia toward creating a massive uncontrolled oil market. This trend has already given rise to a huge illegal transport economy, which, some experts fear, may even outlast the war itself. It could open the way for countries to keep bypassing the established order. Meanwhile, discussions continue about Zelensky's closed-door meeting with the Servant of the People faction. In elite and political circles, there is growing talk that Zelensky is trying to put on a brave face in a losing game, which signals a crisis both within the system and at the front, reports the Telegram channel Legitimny. This perception fuels capital flight from Ukraine and an exodus abroad not only of young people aged 18-22, but also of much of the so-called elite who have begun leaving the country en masse. Rumors are also spreading that Zelensky plans to publicly cancel deferments for many among the elite in order to heat up mobilization and try to raise his plunging ratings. Our sources in the Kyiv General Staff report that Siversk is asking Zelensky's office to lower the mobilization age for Ukrainians to 23 and reduce the number of exemptions for enterprises. The Kyiv commander told Yermak that the AFU cannot simultaneously hold several sectors of the front where Russian forces are breaking through. The Ukrainian army is losing everywhere and is holding only thanks to mobile reserves being rushed to different parts of the front. But the situation is worsening, and Kyiv's general staff expects a new Russian offensive this autumn. Currently, AFU units have already been partially withdrawn from the Lyman and Severodonetsk directions, and their defenses there immediately collapsed. Plugging gaps with manpower no longer works. Rumors say that all frontline soldiers are being denied leave. Everyone is being thrown from one sector to another. This could lead to catastrophe, as troops at the contact line are exhausted, which severely reduces their effectiveness, especially given the rapid collapse of morale amid constant failures. That's all for today's update, my friends. Thank you for watching and staying with the channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and share your thoughts in the comments. Take care, and I'll see you in the next review.